Why does God allow a pain so deep that it feels like it reshapes the very core of who you are? Have you ever wondered why certain wounds did not break you, but instead awakened something inside you that you never knew existed? This is the kind of question that pulls a person into a place of honest reflection, because when the heart is hurting, the soul becomes wide open. And in that opening, God begins to work in ways that comfort never could. Pain, as strange as it sounds, becomes the doorway through which clarity enters. It shakes your assumptions, strips away illusions, and forces you to confront the version of yourself that was too comfortable to grow. There are moments in life when everything feels heavy, when burdens press against your spirit, and you find yourself asking why God would allow such intensity. But what if the pain you faced was not the end of you, but the beginning of a deeper spiritual identity? What if the breaking was actually the shaping, the strengthening, the refining that your destiny required? When God allows pain, it is rarely for destruction. More often, it is for revelation. Pain exposes the cracks we ignored, the patterns we tolerated, the weakness we pretended not to see. It becomes a divine spotlight revealing the inner landscape of the soul. And while it hurts, something powerful begins to happen. You start to see yourself differently. You start to see God differently. You start to understand that strength is not built in seasons of ease, but in seasons of wrestling. God uses pain to stretch your endurance, deepen your faith, sharpen your discernment, and position you for a path you would never have chosen without the fire pushing you forward. The very moments that threaten to break you are often the ones that build unshakable spiritual resilience. And maybe you have already felt this shift, that strange awareness that even in the hardest moments, something in you was growing stronger, wiser, more aligned with purpose. Has there ever been a moment when your pain revealed a truth you needed to see? You already know how it changes the way you pray, the way you think, the way you listen. That is why this message matters, because understanding the purpose behind your pain is part of understanding the purpose behind your calling. And before we move deeper into this journey, let your heart stay open to what God may be revealing through every struggle you survived. If this resonates with you, share your experience in the comments. Let your like support this message, and make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss what comes next in this unfolding understanding as we continue moving forward from here in a way that keeps your spirit attentive to what is coming next. There comes a point in every spiritual journey when God uses pain not just to awaken, but to break cycles you could not break on your own. Pain becomes a divine tool, a scalpel that cuts away emotional patterns, spiritual habits, and inner agreements that were quietly shaping your life for years. When everything is comfortable, you rarely notice the chains around you, but when God allows discomfort, when He shakes the ground beneath your feet, the things that once felt normal suddenly begin to reveal their true weight. Pain exposes the patterns that were draining you. Pain confronts the attachments that were weakening your spirit. Pain forces you to see what you were avoiding, especially the places where you kept returning. Emotionally, even after God whispered that it was time to let go. You might remember a season when a situation felt like it would never shift, when you were tied to people, choices, or expectations that held you in spiritual captivity. And no matter how many times you promised yourself you would move forward, something pulled you back into the same emotional loop. That is where divine pain enters. It disrupts your comfort, shakes your illusions, and breaks the rhythm of dysfunction you lived in without realizing it. Pain becomes the interruption that reveals the truth behind what you once tolerated. Suddenly, you start seeing the cost of staying attached to what harms you spiritually. You see how your peace was leaking, how your identity was bending, how your purpose was shrinking to fit inside places never meant to contain you. When God allows pain, it is because He is breaking something that was breaking you. And sometimes that breaking feels violent because spiritual bondage rarely untangles gently. The heart resists release, the mind clings to familiarity, the spirit hesitates to enter the unknown. But God knows that cycles cannot be transformed while you are still comfortable inside them. Pain shakes the roots, and in that shaking, truths rise to the surface. You begin to notice that certain relationships were feeding your fears instead of your faith. You realize that certain emotional reactions came from wounds you never addressed. You understand that certain choices were echoing old versions of yourself that no longer match who God is shaping you to become. And slowly, without you noticing at first, the pain begins to rewire your spirit. It teaches you boundaries, it sharpens your awareness, it redefines your standards. It gives you the internal strength to say no to what once controlled you. Pain becomes the fire that forges a new identity, a new discipline, a new spiritual posture. And as this transformation unfolds, you start to sense that something in you is shifting toward a deeper alignment, preparing the foundation for what God will reveal ahead as the movement of this process continues unfolding from here in a way that keeps your spirit attentive for what comes next. There are moments in life when pain becomes the lens through which God reveals truths you were never able to see on your own. Pain has a strange way of functioning like spiritual light. It exposes what was hidden, clarifies what was blurry, and uncovers intentions that were masked by comfort or familiarity. You may not notice the true nature of people when everything is easy, but when pressure comes, their character becomes unmistakable. Pain pulls away the filters. It strips away illusions. It forces you to see beyond words and into actions, beyond promises and into patterns, beyond appearances and into motives. And it is often in your most painful seasons that God shows you who is with you, who is against you, and who was never meant to walk your journey in the first place. Sometimes you look back and realize that the pain you felt around certain people was never random. It was discernment. It was God highlighting what your heart refused to acknowledge. Pain reveals when someone's presence weakens your spirit, when their influence distracts your purpose, when their connection drains your peace. Pain uncovers environments that were shrinking your identity, habits that were pulling you away from spiritual clarity, and emotional ties that were quietly steering you away from God's direction. And though you may have prayed for the situation to remain stable, God was using the instability to reveal truth. That truth was not meant to punish you, it was meant to protect you. The deepest insights often emerge in seasons of discomfort. You begin to understand why certain doors closed abruptly, why certain people distanced themselves, why certain opportunities dissolved before you could take hold of them. At first, it feels unfair, but over time, you see that God was uncovering intentions you were not ready to confront. He was showing you the danger of attaching your future to the wrong alliances. He was revealing the emotional and spiritual cost of ignoring his warnings. Pain becomes the instrument that points your attention toward what was harmful, even when it looked harmless. And in that unveiling, something else starts to happen. You gain a level of clarity that shifts your entire perspective. You become more selective with who you allow near your spirit. You listen differently. You discern faster. You trust slower. Not because you are bitter, but because you have learned the weight of spiritual alignment. Pain matures your intuition. It refines your understanding of loyalty, integrity, and purpose. It teaches you that not everyone connected to your life is connected to your destiny. And that awareness begins to shape your steps, preparing your heart for the next layer of what God will reveal as this inner awakening continues unfolding, allowing your spirit to remain engaged with the movement still ahead. There are seasons when the very weight of your pain becomes the force that strengthens your faith in ways gentle moments never could. Faith does not grow in comfort, it grows in resistance. And when God allows you to walk through experiences that shake your certainty, stretch your endurance, or test the limits of your hope, He is not weakening you, He is rooting you. Deep spiritual roots are not formed in days of sunshine, but in storms that refuse to let you stand, unless you anchor yourself in something greater than your circumstances. Pain presses your spirit downward, and in that downward pressure, your roots learn how to hold, how to cling, how to withstand what once would have broken you completely. You may remember moments when your prayers felt heavy, when your tears felt endless, when your strength seemed to disappear little by little. And yet somehow, something inside you kept reaching for God even when nothing around you made sense. That is the mysterious strengthening that only pain can produce. It teaches you how to trust without answers, how to stand without certainty, how to believe without evidence. Pain forces the soul into dependence, not the kind built on desperation, but the kind born from revelation. You discover that faith is not a feeling, it is a posture. It is the inner stance that remains firm, even when your heart trembles. As the struggle deepens, so does the clarity. You start to recognize that God was not distant during your storms. He was developing your endurance. He was shaping a faith that could withstand silence, confusion, and unanswered questions. You learn to pray differently, with a sincerity that only pain can carve. You learn to listen differently, with an openness that only brokenness can create. You learn to surrender differently, not out of fear, but out of recognition that God's strength is the only foundation capable of holding the full weight of your destiny. And slowly, as your roots grow deeper, your confidence in God begins to move from your mind into your spirit. You stop relying solely on what you see and start relying on what He has spoken, on what you have survived, on how He has sustained you, even when you did not understand the process. Faith becomes less of a concept and more of a reality woven into your identity. And as this inner transformation continues unfolding, your heart becomes prepared for the next revelation that will rise from the very strength being built inside you. If this part of the message resonates with something you have lived, share your experience in the comments so that your words can strengthen someone walking through their own season of pain, allowing this journey to remain connected as it continues forward. There comes a point in the journey where pain stops feeling like an attack and begins to reveal itself as a purification. Not the kind that happens quickly or gently, but the kind that strips away everything that no longer aligns with who you are becoming. When God allows a painful season to press against your life, He is not only strengthening you, He is refining you. Pain burns away illusions, melts down pretenses, and exposes the raw material of your character. In that exposure, what is impure rises to the surface, not to shame you, but to free you from what you did not realize was weighing you down. Pain becomes the fire that separates the essential from the temporary, the divine from the distracting, the purposeful from the unnecessary. You may have felt this shift without even realizing it. Suddenly, the things that once satisfied you no longer carry the same weight. Conversations that once entertained you now feel empty. Environments you once tolerated begin to feel spiritually heavy. This is the purification process at work. God is cleansing your desires, reshaping your priorities, recalibrating your inner compass. The discomfort you feel is not a sign that you are lost. It is a sign that you are being redirected towards something higher. Pain becomes the filter that reveals what truly belongs in your life and what was only occupying space. As this purification unfolds, you start to recognize how much of your old self was built on survival rather than purpose. You notice how certain habits were numbing you, how certain attachments were slowing you, how certain dreams were shaped more by fear than by calling. Pain brings all of this into the light Without it, you might have continued carrying burdens that were silently weakening your spirit. But with it, you begin to release what no longer aligns with the person God is developing within you. Purification is not glamorous. It is raw, honest, and disruptive. But it is also liberating, because the more you let go, the more room there is for God to build something new. And that rebuilding begins subtly. You start to crave peace instead of approval. You start valuing depth over distraction. You start prioritizing what nourishes your spirit rather than what entertains your emotions. Pain sharpens your discernment, clears your spiritual vision, and reveals the difference between what felt good and what was truly good for you. It is in this sacred refinement that your identity begins to shift. You no longer move from impulse, you move from intention. You no longer react from wounds, you respond from wisdom. As this inner cleansing continues shaping your path, deeper awareness begins to rise within you, an awareness that prepares you for the next layer of meaning behind the struggles you have endured, allowing the journey to unfold forward with clarity that was born from the very fire that once felt unbearable. There are moments when the pain you experienced was not only shaping you, but silently removing you from places that were never meant to hold your future. God sometimes allows discomfort to rise because He knows you would never leave certain environments, relationships, or situations unless something within you was shaken. Pain becomes a spiritual alarm, a disruption that signals danger ahead or misalignment in the present. You might not recognize the warning at first. You may even resist it, trying to repair what God was gently dismantling. But as the pressure increases, as doors close and connections fade, you begin to understand that the pain was not rejection, it was protection. Many people look back and realize that what they thought was a devastating loss was actually divine rescue. There were individuals who would have weakened your purpose, opportunities that would have drained your peace, and paths that looked promising but were quietly leading you into spiritual exhaustion. Pain exposes these hidden dangers and forces separation before the consequences become too heavy to bear. When God pulls you away, it may feel harsh, but His perspective reaches beyond the moment. He sees the traps that were invisible to you. He sees the intentions behind smiles, the weight behind commitments, the spiritual atmosphere behind environments that looked harmless. And just as God uses pain to remove you from what harms you, He also uses it to draw you toward what will heal you. Pain awakens a hunger for depth, truth, alignment, and spiritual clarity. You start seeking connection that elevates you instead of draining you. You start craving relationships rooted in honesty and purpose. You start moving toward environments where your spirit can breathe again. Pain becomes the force that breaks your attachment to what is fading and guides you toward what is growing. The more you resist, the more the pain intensifies, not as punishment, but as a reminder that your spirit was never designed to settle where God intends to elevate. Eventually, you begin to notice the shift. You feel lighter away from certain people. You feel clearer once certain doors close. You feel stronger when you walk in the direction that once frightened you. This is the hidden mercy inside painful seasons. God is not only removing what is harmful, He is preparing space for what is sacred. And as you respond to this guidance, you start recognizing that every separation, every frustration, every unexpected ending carried a divine fingerprint. Pain was not simply happening to you, it was happening for you. And while this process continues moving beneath the surface, your heart becomes better positioned for the next spiritual insight that will rise from all these redirections, as the path ahead quietly unfolds with meaning that is still taking shape. Pain often comes not merely to teach, but to discipline, shaping character and fortifying the inner strength required for the next phase of your life. God's allowance of struggle is not a sign of abandonment. It is evidence of his care. The very moments that challenge you most are often the exact moments that develop resilience, maturity, and spiritual discernment. As your soul faces difficulty, you are tested, stretched, and taught to hold fast to what is true. The lessons hidden within suffering are subtle, yet profound. They illuminate the patterns of your heart, the depth of your commitment, and the authenticity of your faith. Every disappointment, every delay, every wound is meticulously orchestrated to reveal what cannot be seen in times of ease. You learn to recognize distractions that once seemed important but were empty. You discover the difference between relationships that strengthen and those that drain. You begin to see the unseen hand of God guiding you, even when clarity feels distant. And as the fire of pain continues to press upon you, your character is refined. You start to understand that endurance is more than patience. It is active faith under pressure. You begin to release attachments that compromise your spiritual growth, habits that diminish your peace, and attachments that erode your vision. The process may feel isolating, yet it is precisely in this solitude that wisdom grows. You notice the hidden motives behind people's words, the subtle influence of environments, and the silent alignment of circumstances. Every tear, every night of sleepless prayer, every moment of wrestling with uncertainty becomes a tool that molds your discernment. The pain forces you to confront truths you might have avoided, yet in confronting them, you find a clarity that reshapes your perspective and prepares your heart for divine alignment. And as you navigate through these challenges, you come to see that pain is not arbitrary. It is intentional. It is a discipline rooted in love, designed to teach what cannot be learned any other way. Your endurance is strengthened, your insight sharpened, and your soul attuned to recognize God's presence even in the subtle whisper. You learn to distinguish between temporary discomfort and divine direction, between the fleeting and the eternal. The lessons you extract from this suffering are treasures stored within your spirit, waiting to manifest as guidance, wisdom, and strength in seasons to come. The transformation is gradual yet undeniable, shaping your capacity to navigate life with a resilience that reflects God's purpose. If you have ever felt this refining work through your own struggle, leave a comment sharing how God has used your pain to strengthen your faith and insight, allowing your testimony to encourage others as this ongoing process continues to unfold in your life. As pain continues to unfold in your life, it begins to realign your identity, shifting the way you see yourself, your purpose, and your connection with God. What once defined you, your achievements, your relationships, your comfort zones, starts to lose its hold as you are drawn into a deeper understanding of who you truly are in Christ. The struggles that once felt like obstacles now reveal themselves as instruments of transformation. They illuminate the areas where your spirit was over-reliant on the temporary rather than the eternal, the fleeting rather than the unshakable. Every tear, every disappointment, every moment of heartache slowly rewires your perception, helping you to discern between what merely fills your time and what fulfills your calling. Pain becomes a teacher, guiding you away from superficial definitions of worth and pointing you toward the essence of your spiritual identity. During these seasons, you notice a subtle but profound shift in how you approach life. Choices that once seemed urgent now feel measured. Priorities that once dominated your attention are replaced with pursuits aligned with purpose. The challenges you endure begin to reveal the values embedded in your spirit, illuminating the difference between what truly matters and what only seemed important in fleeting moments. Pain develops an inner alignment that strengthens your character, teaching patience, humility, and resilience. It reveals the hidden layers of your personality, exposing weaknesses that need surrender and strengths that require acknowledgement. In learning to navigate these lessons, you begin to operate from a place of clarity and intentionality, where each decision is filtered through insight rather than impulse. And as your identity realigns, the relationships around you begin to reflect the changes within. You no longer tolerate environments that diminish your spirit or individuals who distract from your path. Your discernment sharpens, your standards rise, and your capacity for connection deepens. Pain has created a filter that allows you to recognize what is truly supportive, what is truly nurturing, and what is truly aligned with the destiny God has designed for you. You find that the lessons of suffering are not merely about endurance, they are about transformation, about reorienting your life toward authenticity, purpose, and divine alignment. And as this ongoing process continues to mold your spirit, you become increasingly prepared to step into the next chapter, carrying with you the insights and resilience that only a life refined through trials can produce, positioning you for a future shaped by wisdom rather than circumstance. One of the most profound lessons pain teaches is the importance of trusting God's timing rather than leaning on your own understanding. In moments of suffering, it is easy to question why certain events unfold as they do, why doors remain closed, why prayers seem to echo without answer. Yet these seasons are not random. They are intricately woven into the tapestry of your life by a God who sees the entirety of your journey, including the chapters you have yet to experience. Pain stretches your patience and expands your perception, helping you recognize that delays are not denials and silences are not abandonment. Each unanswered question, each postponed opportunity, each moment of discomfort serves as a lesson in dependence, teaching you to align your pace with the rhythm of divine providence rather than the urgency of human expectation. As this understanding deepens, you begin to see that timing is not just a matter of scheduling, it is a matter of preparation. God orchestrates circumstances, refines hearts, and positions events so that when the moment finally arrives, the outcome is more impactful, more sustainable, and more aligned with the purpose He has for your life. Pain is the preparatory process that allows your spirit to mature in ways comfort never could. It teaches discernment, shapes character, and builds resilience, ensuring that you are not only ready to receive blessings, but also equipped to steward them wisely. What may have once felt like a long, unending struggle now reveals itself as a vital training ground, where patience, faith, and insight are cultivated under pressure, and where the lessons learned become the foundation for a life lived in alignment with God's design. During these seasons, you also begin to notice a transformation in perspective. The things that once caused frustration or despair now become markers of growth, evidence that you are being guided rather than abandoned. Relationships, opportunities, and even setbacks are no longer merely events. They are instruments in a larger divine process. You start to recognize patterns, connections, and alignments that were invisible before, understanding that nothing has happened outside of God's knowledge or care. Pain becomes the teacher that instills a disciplined awareness, a spiritual rhythm that allows you to move through life with intentionality rather than reaction, with faith rather than doubt, and with clarity rather than confusion. And as you navigate this intricate process, the trust you cultivate in God's timing positions you to step confidently into the next season of life. Your spirit becomes aligned with the unfolding plan, your perspective sharpened, and your readiness heightened, all while the process quietly prepares you for the divine opportunities and encounters that are still emerging, ensuring your journey moves forward with both discernment and purpose. The culmination of pain, struggle, and divine shaping is the transformation that equips you to carry the destiny God has prepared for you. Every season of hardship, every moment of doubt, every tear shed in the silence has been assembling the pieces of a purpose greater than what you could have envisioned on your own. Pain refines your understanding, purifies your intentions, and strengthens your capacity to walk in alignment with God's will. You begin to recognize that each challenge was never random, but part of a deliberate design intended to shape your character, sharpen your discernment, and cultivate a resilience that becomes a testimony to His faithfulness. What once felt unbearable now serves as the foundation upon which a stronger, wiser, and spiritually mature version of you is built, ready to engage fully with the opportunities, relationships, and purposes that are emerging in your life. And as you step forward, you realize that the endurance cultivated through trials is not merely personal growth. It is preparation for impact. You are being positioned to move with confidence, to act with clarity, and to embrace the divine assignments that require both wisdom and strength. The very circumstances that once threatened to break you now serve to equip you for moments of profound influence, moments where your faith and character intersect to create outcomes that glorify God and serve others. Pain becomes a precursor to purpose, struggle becomes the teacher of persistence, and waiting becomes a lesson in divine timing. You understand that your journey has been orchestrated with precision, with each difficulty serving as a step toward revelation, each hardship as a guide toward alignment, and each moment of discomfort as a calibration of your readiness for what is next. And now, as you reflect on the entirety of this process, it becomes clear that God has been at work in ways you could not have perceived in the moment. He has prepared you, strengthened you, and positioned you to receive the fullness of His plan. So, as you continue walking, take a moment to recognize how far you have come, to honor the lessons learned, and to embrace the person you are becoming. If you have followed this journey with your heart open, let this moment be a confirmation. Your pain has not been in vain. Your struggles have been purposeful, and your story is unfolding exactly as it should. Stay attentive, remain faithful, and step forward with confidence, because the next chapters will not only reveal blessings beyond measure, but also opportunities to demonstrate the resilience, wisdom, and faith that God has nurtured within you. If this message has resonated with your spirit, subscribe to continue walking in alignment with divine purpose. Leave a comment sharing how you have witnessed God's work in your own trials, like this video, to affirm your commitment to growth, and consider exploring the next message that will expand upon these insights in your ongoing journey.